welcome everybody. Good morning. So let me just quickly transit into this session. Well, success is defined in many different ways, but it's rare that it happens in isolation. Establishing one's formal and informal networks, getting into position to welcome opportunity, and lastly, seizing it is second nature to some. So as we seek to empower and propel women into leadership positions and overcome societal challenges, are we providing the right environment in the workplace to help women simultaneously realize their personal and professional ambitions? So providing this level of support might seem complex to some, but it can be done. Men have done it for years. This panel will look at the hurdles women encounter and what companies are doing to support women already in workplace and those entering the workforce. Well, this morning we had a very good engaging discussions with the previous panels regarding raising girls, and so now is the time where the girls are grown up. They're grown up and they're ready to go into the workforce. So what do we do and how do we support them? So I just want to welcome all the panels. We are really in a treat this morning. Yeah. We are delighted to have these four panels, highly esteemed corporate leaders who are very diverse background, and they are widely traveled. They are seasoned speakers. They've been in panels in different forums, and what more is that they are the champions. They are the true believers of women diversity and inclusion. And in fact, they are some of the most of them, all of them are executive sponsors in their current organizations. So without further ado, I would like to just ask the first question as we go on this topic this morning. Now, while we know that there are exceptions, it is generally observed that as women rise through the ranks and advance in their career ladder, the percentage or ratio of women leaders diminishes gradually. The question is this by personal choice? Or if it's not, then how do we then build a sustainable culture or identify enablers that will retain or keep them keep them in the roles as long as possible? So with that first question, maybe I'd like to just throw this to Tara.
Hi, good morning, Johnny. Thank you for having me here today, and happy to be a part of this panel. So it's a really good question, and ironically, it's not HSBC research, but some external research was just sent to us recently because we were asking ourselves the same question, because we did see the female rate drop off at a certain level. While we were hiring female graduates at a really high rate, or more junior female talent, as they got more senior, we found that the promotions were going to either internal men or external females and men. So we weren't seeing the women internally rise up. And this was a few years ago when we were asking ourselves this question. So the research showed us, which I thought was pretty interesting, is that the ambitions between men and women are not any different, right, when they start or as they get older. And there is this myth out there that women's ambitions kind of, get less once they have a child. And then the research shows us that that doesn't happen either. So, once some of this research was given to us, we kind of went back to say, okay, what do we have to do? So for us, it was about creating the right leadership programs around females to make sure that they were getting included and to make sure that they were getting the openness that they needed. We were making sure that we had the right number of females in succession plans, on candidate lists for any jobs, and that we had the right programs to support them to, if women did decide to have children, the right programs to support them either when they were on maternity leave or actually coming back into the workforce. And there's certain programs that we've even done, or I've been involved with outside of Malaysia, where we have these return to work programs, but we're hiring women that are coming out of child leave. So what we're saying is that this is not by choice, but it is a result of the culture within certain organizations, and that I truly believe, based on what I've seen within HSBC, that when you provide the right culture, whether that's to help them with their careers, help them regarding flexibility in support, that you will see the difference. So for us locally in the last 18 months within my business, we've seen in our engagement surveys an increase in the percentage of women that will be here in 5+ years and that sees their career flourishing at HSBC. And I do think that's a result of the way HSBC Malaysia has put in programs through leadership and to help parents during these times. And then that last point is key as well, because I think for us, when we look at the ambition of someone leaving to go have a child, we've in the past focused on the mother. We're changing that verbiage to focus on parents. And what we've seen is as we've changed kind of that that wording and that cultural feel, and we still have a bit to go, but as we change that, we're seeing women flourish more because it's about giving, paternity leave and flexible time off, not just to mothers, but to fathers. So we are seeing through the leadership programs and through these other kinds of support policies, procedures, and cultural changes, we're seeing more women not only flourish, but through the surveys feel more secure about their futures at the organization.
Well, thanks, Tara. Well, Weena, do you see the same kind of program you have at Deloitte?
Right. Thanks, Johnny. So, morning, everybody. I think when I looked at this question, it kind of reminded me the time where I had a 1-year secondment in Japan, Deloitte, Japan. So within Deloitte, you see, coming from Deloitte, Singapore, then where the auditing, accounting industry was full with women, I think women really, took over the population then in terms of the hiring. When I went over to Japan, I got a shock. It's like, where are the women, right? And so if you look at that, it ties to what Tara says culturally, because of the support system and all that. There was some study that was made by Harvard Business Review, and this is interesting because this goes back to 2003. There was one survey that says what holds women back from senior leadership position. Can you imagine? 2003, that question was asked, and now 2020, we are still harping on the same question. I think at the end of the day, it's probably something that how women perceive is that, do I have the roadblock? Do I have the support infrastructure? Whereas the men will look probably at very differently, as in, it's because they have to balance between work and family. But so it's two different perceptions from women and men that I think it has got to start to change. Yeah, change is very vital. So how to have sustainable culture and all that, truly agree. You should start from the top. The top must be committed, right? And it all works from the top to the bottom. And once you have that and you walk that talk, I think it will be a great step to start with. Yeah.
Right. Well, interestingly, you talk about Harvard. I mean, I have some kind of noteworthy, interesting facts that I just read recently about, of all the countries in Asia, it seems that Thailand has the highest proportion of female CEOs in the world, interestingly, with 30% of companies employing female CEOs. This is followed by China, to my surprise, with 19%. So you have 30% with Thailand and what you call 19% with Thailand. And recently, CNN in May, they talk about the number of women running Fortune 500 companies has hit an all-time record of 37. This although 37 in number may be kind of large, but it actually just constitutes about 7.4% of the Fortune 500. Last year, there were 33. So this year, it was additional 4. Yeah. So Leah, in that sense, what do you think of is this kind of consistent that you see across, your company in Philip Morris?
Well, hi, Johnny, and good morning to everyone. And again, thank you for the invitation. In Philip Morris, I do feel that, inclusion and diversity has actually been a key focus for the last maybe 7-8 years. And I think it was really a deliberate and conscious choice to really push and, put a lot of effort into promoting inclusion and diversity. And of course, I think as with many other inclusion and diversity programs, it starts with gender diversity diversity, but it has now, of course, broadened into inclusivity in terms of race, ethnicity. Now with the LGBTQ representation has to be there as well. Actually, just today, I think it was announced that Philip Morris has also signed to be one of the CEOs for the Valuable 500, which is this group of CEOs around the world that's pushing for disability inclusion, right? So we have really broadened the inclusion and diversity program in Philip Morris. I think it's really because our senior leaders have realized, right, that as a tobacco company that has announced that we are undertaking this massive transformation, right? Because we do want to stop selling cigarettes and we want to switch and deliver a smoke-free future. And we cannot do this massive transformation with just, the old boys school of male CEOs, and that we really need to tap into a diverse talent pool. And so I've seen that, and in my personal experience as well. I'm a lawyer from the Philippines, born and raised in rural Philippines. I never thought I would have an international career. And I joined Philip Morris, and I was pregnant. I was starting a family. But it has never been a hurdle for me to advance in my career. I've been assigned in Switzerland, in Turkey, and now I'm here in Malaysia. I have my family with me, and all the support that I need. I have a son with autism. All the support that I need, the company has provided in order to really, see that I progress in my career. And I think it's because, as Wayna was saying earlier, the tone at the top, the commitment from the leaders is really there, and that enables the real diversity and inclusion to be embedded in the policies and practices of the company.
Well, I mean, you and Tara are the beneficiaries of, the kind of good support structure over the years, in your career, as you were rising the rank and up to now. So, well, Dave, I deliberately left this question to the last for you. So, what do you think? You're on mute, Dave.
There we go. Sorry about that. So a couple of things. When I heard the S&P numbers, right, the first thing I thought is, boy, we have a long way to go, right? So 37 out of 500, to me, doesn't sound like a real good report card, right? So when I think about our accountability as leaders, I think about how far we're going to have to move, right? So I think to the points made, there is progress being made. I think as leaders, the word we have to identify with is responsibility, right? So we are responsible for driving the change, for driving balance. And for us in Boston Scientific, right, we look at, as well stated by all of our panelists, we look at advocacy as really important, right? So it's the advocacy at the senior most levels there. We look at sponsorship, right? So we have multiple platforms that we use here for sponsorship of female and diverse talent across the globe. That becomes really important, right? And then for us, it translates into holding ourselves accountable, publishing metrics, right? We publish an annual performance report. You can all look at it, bostonscientific.com, and it says these are what we're after from a diversity perspective. Here's how we did. This is what we're after from an environmental perspective. Here's how we did. And when you have to measure yourself as an organization and publish it, it definitely drives change, right? I'm a manufacturing guy, so we generally get what we measure, right? So I kind of roll it into that, our responsibility, and then we got to own it. And then from there, we drive it through advocacy and sponsorship. And then that rolls into specific programs, right? The other thing that struck me is when we talked about mothers and fathers, right? And so in many cases, I think that was a great point around when you're talking about parenting, right? Well, now we don't have to have one half making a decision, right? Around who works, who doesn't, who works from home, who doesn't, who works a reduced schedule. Those opportunities need to flow both ways, right? And then that by nature will level out just some of those norms that drive different behaviors. Right. So I think a lot of great points to reiterate, but that leadership from the top is where it all begins.
Yeah, that reminds me of an incident where in my organization recently during the COVID the MCO, the last few months. So one of our colleagues, who's a senior engineer, and you know, he's got a family, 3 kids, and his wife actually is one of the directors in a training consultant company. So he has to take that back seat to kind of work from home more often than the wife. So as kind of an organization, although his role is quite critical for the operations here, you know, in being an engineer, we somehow enable him and allow him to have that sort of like a balanced schedule where, you know, he comes in half a day so that he can still do whatever he needs to do and still meet that sort of KPI, while at the same time support the wife who's actually, you know, out there to run the business in that sense. So I think that's so important, isn't it? That, you know, the company is understanding, and especially times like this in this pandemic, where the shared responsibility, the element of being co-shared, this kind of, you know, parenting is so crucial, so that, you know, both sides of the family, I mean the couple, have that sort of opportunity to be successful at their workplace. Well, that's really great. Great sharing so far. And I know, well, let me just segue to you know, another topic right now. As we go along, we talk about jobs of the future, securing or you know, future-proofing our workforce, and the urgency of it. So this shift is already here somewhat, and with this COVID-19 pandemic, it somehow, the digital era kind of accelerated, you know, so fast that, you know, with this, you see that this accelerated pace is also meaning that it presents a new frontier, right, for more opportunities for women to flourish in this arena. So what do you think of that?
I'll jump in, I guess.
Yeah.
I think that globally, the current situation has told us that all of the norms we've been clinging to, or many of the norms, I should say, are now irrelevant. And I think that enables broader participation in the workforce in a whole ton of different ways, right? The easiest example would be, my father worked in Manhattan his whole life, right? And if you worked in the financial services industry, you commuted to Manhattan, and the real estate is the most expensive, right? And everyone had to be there. And now Manhattan is empty, right? And people realized, hey, I don't need to be in Manhattan to work, right? So the norm of what's expected, even in commuting and where we are and all that has changed, enabling far more people to work in that industry that maybe couldn't make the 2-hour commute from New Jersey and couldn't, you know, leave the home and had to be home for certain events with the family, right? So I think it's changing that paradigm in a big way, right? I mean, just blowing up the sort of physical structure is a perfect example of how we're going to enable far different participation in the workforce, and I think it's a good thing. Right.
And Tara, yesterday we were just talking about in HSBC how the JD, you know, how HSBC recruit the IT employees or you know, the leadership. So would you want to share something about that?
Yeah, I love this question when we talked about it, Johnny, because it's, I mean, Dave's right. It is changing the whole norm now, right? All this new normal is probably an overused word. But what we were seeing, and I love anything that has to do with women in STEM, right? Because historically, there's just been less women in these roles, right? So what was happening to us in my previous role when I was in the UK is we were building out this this digital business, and we weren't getting the women candidates, right? They just weren't coming through, and we were getting more recruiters. You know, we were doing the wrong things. We were going to more recruiters, more areas, and it just wasn't working. And we know that, you know, women can be more literal, right? We read the job description very literally, and if I don't have this and this and this, I'm not going to apply, right? I mean, I do the same thing sometimes. So it's one of the requirements. I mean, it's a silly old age requirement as well, was you need minimum 10 years experience. So we changed the job descriptions to take care of that. And just from removing that one thing, we actually saw the female candidates I mean, just tons of them coming in, and we have a really high percentage now. I think it's in the low 40s of females in our digital business now, where it was like in the single digits when we first started, right? So this is when we first embarked on this, probably about 6 years ago. So it was just astonishing to me that that one thing changed the whole recruitment process for us. Now, since then, we've also used a third-party vendor just to rewrite our job descriptions. So just changing the terminology and the way something is written has also helped us recruit more female candidates in technology and digital as well. But yeah, just removing that one bullet point was a game changer for us.
Right. Well, what a revolutionary kind of way of encouraging participation from women. I mean, back in our workplace, well, Intech is like a 24-month-old company. I helped to start up this company, EMS, and just some statistics I'd like to share. 50% of our female, our exempt staff are female. So that's something which we really take that sort of a deliberate action to make sure that we have diversity. And although our number of managers right now stands a bit lower, 23%, but I think we are at least having some percentage. Yeah, is a good start. But what I wanted to say is this: when the engineering candidates, we have hired quite a few fresh outs, fresh graduates in the last 24 months, and I'm happy to say that 17 out of 21, which is constitute about 81%, are all female, and most of them are in the STEM, engineering positions. So it is something that we do recognize, and we are intentional about it. And out of this, so far, we have spotted 2 out of 4 are in the female. They are in the shadow leadership team. So I'm really excited to see how this thing is unfolding as we go along. We are 24 months old, and our plan is really to help to see how we can sow and continue to nurture this group of young girls. How they can take up that leadership position in due time. Yeah. So Reina, and maybe at this point in time, I will just refer to you. Is there any similar story in Deloitte on the participation in IT?
I think in the professional service line, going paperless is definitely one of those things that we have advocated maybe more than 5, 6, 7 years ago, and it was very, very timely. No longer were the days when we started where you have files of papers and all that, right? So that itself, I think, to the young generation definitely is good, because I really could see the productivity there. But one thing I want to emphasize was, I think it's time that we actually move away from the traditional kind of, in our forefathers' days, or rather, I won't say forefathers' days, where your bosses will look at you, or are you in the office? Okay, just because you're in the office from 8:30 to 5:30, therefore you are a good staff. Yeah. So I think the presentism, that concept needs to move out, because at the end of the day, you want to look at, hey, what's your strength? We want to focus on the strength. We want to focus on the deliverables. Yeah. So performance management also have got to change. And indeed, in Deloitte, we have also changed on that note. So I think with the flexibility of AI, and then with the support system for the women, because now they've got to juggle, I would say. Yeah. Of course, the father is there as well, but that flexibility to also provide the alternative employment options, for example, part-time or reduced work portfolios, which when we started in our heydays then, you never thought about it, right? So it's difficult, and I think it's now a reality that we will be seeing more of it.
Yeah, I mean, earlier in the session, the previous panel talks about raising girls. Well, I have an 18-year-old daughter, just one child. So, I mean, she's our only hope, you know what I mean, to continue on while, one of these days we are no longer around. But what I've done is really to put her in this college. She's now in year 2, diploma in IT. So that's precisely one of the reasons why, we want to help to provide her that sort of like a survival skill for the future. in that sense with this diploma in IT, so that she can have a good start, perhaps, and hoping that she's going to be successful later on, and just to encourage her. Well, she has 2 more years to go after this, to get into degree. Yeah, so I just kind of share that. Yeah. All right. Okay. Let's talk about male leadership right now. I guess the audience would like to know, from the perspective of men, how do we see advocating? Yeah, we talk about male advocacy a lot in the last few sessions. So with that one male panel in mind, Dave, I let you have the privilege to kickstart this.
Yeah, so this is a great question, right? And we've got a couple of initiatives around male advocacy or general senior leadership advocacy, right? And I think one of the key things, going back to my comments around responsibility, our responsibility for driving success in this space, is that we also need to not only focus on mentorship, but need to think about sponsorship, right? So mentorship is and mentorship's important, right? Mentorship is, hey, we're helping folks to better their skills, et cetera. But sponsorship makes me feel more accountable for driving success, right? So we have programs where we pair senior leaders. I was paired with a woman who was based in Puerto Rico, is now in the US. I'm a sponsor, right? I'm not a mentor, I'm a sponsor. And it's helping her move through her career, getting her visibility to things that she might not see that are going, as I have a bit of a broader vision of the organization or view to the organization. And so sponsorship is an important one for us, right? And then we've also, at a senior leadership perspective, we've got another program just around men advocates, right? So around how are we driving men that are advocating to driving diversity and inclusion throughout the organization, and specifically on women participation, right? So that's important, and again, tying that into goals, but looking ourselves as sponsors, not mentors, I think is another thing that drives behavior. I'm now vested in my sponsees' success in moving through the organization, and that in itself is driving change, right?
Well, in your experience through the years, do you see any resistance from the male in terms of supporting this? Is there any example?
I don't. I think when I started my career, I think when I started my career 25 years ago, you would hear sort of comments like, I work for a massive multinational, and they were very early on the diversity piece. Now, 25 years ago, the world was a different place, and you would hear people say, well, if there is whatever, if there was this for women, how come this not for men, right? I think 25 years ago, you heard that. Today, in a modern day multinational US-based firm, I don't see that at all. I think I see more people seeing the benefits and wanting to lean in and help. We get more people wanting to be sponsors than in many cases in a given program we can handle, right? Because it's somewhat limited in terms of just how many people we could track through it. So 25 years ago, yeah, that was a bit of a depressing thing. Today, I actually don't see that. I see far more champions.
Right. Yeah. So I actually asked the female panelists, the 3 ladies here, to kind of think of one incident or instance where you actually have male advocacies in your organizations or in your career. Someone who helped you, who actually believe in you and really celebrate your success. So do you have any kind of good story to share with us today? I look at Reina, she's nodding. Okay, let Reina go first.
Thank you. So Johnny, I think when I talked about my secondment to Deloitte Japan, so indeed, if I look back, and if indeed I really did not have that male Japanese partner then to support my career, I wouldn't be where I am right now. Yeah, and I would say that itself, he's provided me that network that at that time I knew the senior management, just as probably just a 3-year experience stuff, but you have access through him to bring you to network, to the clients, to the senior management of the firm, Deloitte Japan then. That's a big thing, People at managers level haven't even had the guts or chance to shake the hands of the founder, and yet I could just walk there and he sees me, say, "Hey, hi, Raina," then everybody looks at me, lah. Who are you? You know. I think definitely it must be something that they see in us, something that they feel that we make that impact. Just one little story. I'm a golfer, and you know, golfs are usually a man's game, but of course the ladies are coming. The ladies are there. I'm the only women golfer in my men's buddies team, right? And why is it that they allow me to play? It's not because I'm a lady, but they say that, hey, Raina, you play like the same pace as we do. We are about the same standard. Okay, join us. So I think that's something that I would say that I'm the female crocodile within the team itself. So I would say that I think the moment they see that we can be as good as them, I would not say better, they would embrace us. They can see that we bring equally good revenues, good results. We make equally good decision making and all that. I think they would start to embrace and have more women into the teams.
But what a wonderful story, Raina. Yeah, I know you talk about when you were in Japan. It's like the first time landing there. It's a male-dominated society. Yeah, that must be really nervous and nerve-wracking. Yeah, the first time you met your counterpart. Tara, you are another perfect example of having that sort of opportunities given. So was there someone in your career journey that someone who really believed in you and gave you that opportunity?
Yeah, I just spoke to him yesterday. So he, so my sponsor, right, and Dave's right, we need sponsors as well in the organization. I met him right after I joined the U.S. business almost 17 years ago. He's Australian, but like any of these multinational companies that we just heard, has moved to about 12 countries, throughout his 30 plus years. And he's the one that has just given me this open space to not only take risks and do things. I have a very diverse career. I've gone from managing the branch network in the US to a regional CEO to COO of EMEA, to running a business in Malaysia, to running a commercial team out of Hong Kong. I mean, all over, largely because of him. So no matter where he's gone in the world, he takes the time with me. He sits on our global executive committee, and he's there. And I have other advocates, but he's the one I would say that is just helping to open up my eyes and bringing opportunities to me and speaking about me. So I am thankful for that. And the one thing he always said to me, you just think, what can I do for you, right? Can I help with anything? He always just said, pay it forward to me. So that always resonated with me in terms of being a sponsor and and I would do mentor and sponsor people anyway, and the amount of time I spend with other, females. But he just said to me, pay it forward. And he taught me a lot about how to get a very diverse, team, right? He was in Hong Kong. He was the sponsor for LGBT. He was the one out there that had the highest female equivalent in his teams. So he is just a promoter of this and lives and breathes it. So for me, he was key, and I still have that regular contact with him.
Wow, that's so wonderful. Well, Leah, I don't want to kind of leave you out for sure. Yeah, you've been quiet for a while.
Sure.
I know you have your own story. Yeah.
Yes, I do. In fact, my story of a very positive experience with a male advocate for, women empowerment really started even before I joined Philip Morris. Because as I mentioned earlier, right, when I joined Philip Morris, I was starting a family, which I didn't know when they were interviewing me. So, I went through the process, I went through the hiring process, and then they made an offer. And I said, I'll take, the weekend to think about it. And over the weekend, I found out I was pregnant. So then I knew that at the time, Philip Morris in the Philippines has just gone through this huge business combination. And so they were very, very busy, and they really needed like additional help, right? Especially from the law department. So I felt so conscious now to suddenly just accept this offer that they made me, knowing that in like 6 months or so, I'm going to have to leave for my maternity leave. So then I called them up and I said, look, I'm not going to complain. I am not going to, claim any equal opportunity violation here. I just want you to know, apparently I'm pregnant. So if you want to take back the offer, no, no hard feelings. And the vice president for law for Asia at the time told me it's not even a consideration. Why are you even bringing this up? This isn't an issue. You were the one who was chosen through that grueling, hiring process. You are the one candidate that we are going with. It doesn't matter that you're pregnant. And so I joined, and over the years, he's been the one who's really helped me, and on my first international assignment as well. And I wanted to take my son, who was very young at the time, and I just didn't want to be parted from him. He was the one who insisted on going up to the global HR head and saying we need an exception for childcare support for a young mother. He got it for me. So I have this, and all through my career, it's always been male managing directors actually who don't just do big talk, but are really authentic in their belief in women empowerment and in diversity and inclusion, who actually call out, when they hear someone say some, toxic toxic statements against women, for example, who call out these kinds of statements and really authentically advocate for women empowerment. And they're the ones who have really made a difference in my career.
Right, and Leah, if I remember correctly, in our conversation previously, following your example, they kind of changed the policy, yeah,
Correct.
to allow. Yeah, I mean, it is so good that you are the pioneer in that sense. Yeah.
I don't know if it was just me or if it was really, there was something else. But yes,
Right.
After I got that exception, the next year they updated our international assignments policy to cover childcare for anyone, who wants to bring their child to an international assignment. Yes.
Right. Well, just before we go into that question, I see one question coming up for Dave. I'll read that shortly. But before we move out of this segment, talking about male advocacy, the last job that I was with, it was a very large multinational, one of the top 3 in the world, EMS subcon. When my vice president of HR, she's a female, when she managed to get sponsorship for management training, and I was one of the privileged in Malaysia, one of the sites. Yeah, there were only 2 sites, one in China and one in Penang. In fact, not even Johor. She gave us an allocation of a management trainee for HR. Now, how often is that? Really in a history, you rarely get a HR management trainee. I'd like to do something different. Number one, because in this society in Malaysia, we talk about in a private sector. Yeah, we always talk about diversity and inclusion. So I wanted to make an example of this, where I hired one fresh grad who's a Malay lady. Yeah, so I kind of killed 2 birds with 1 stone: diversity of ethnicity, and of course a lady, yeah, a woman. So that sort of budget is like 100 over K for the 18 months program. So it's something which is very rare, but I jump on it, and I'm so glad of how she has progressed. I think she's in the call this morning. I told her that I'm going to use her example as part of the success story, where within the last 3 years that she has joined that company, she's still there. From management training, 18 months after, she was kind of given that enlarged responsibility to head as a HR business partner for one of the sites in Penang. So I mean, it's really a great kind of example, yeah. And I, for one, I'm with Dave. I'm very big on women diversity in that sense. So Dave, this question that just has come in, can you share more of how Boston Scientific sponsorship program work? I have recently attended a forum that states male ally and sponsorship is crucial in women's career progression.
Yeah, so that's a great question, right? And I would say we are constantly sort of evolving and adding new programs and trying to figure out how to build this out across both female as well as broader D&I. We have a global director of women's programs, right? That sits in corporate, and that's helped to sort of bring some focus on pulling together. What happens, we have a lot of locations, and a lot of places, whether they're commercial organizations or manufacturing organizations, are kind of doing their own thing, right? So there are a lot of sub-levels that are aligned to maybe more specific needs. But globally, we run a program called Accelerate, and that pairs a senior leader sponsor with a sponsee who would typically be manager level, roughly, some directors, and that's paired through a program. And that program, it's a bit self-defined in terms of how you work together. My sponsee and I have been working together for years, and she and I connect, on as needed, on career decisions, on opportunities, on me identifying something that she might want to look at. We also use that group will have formal sessions where they'll bring in a sort of a global female leader. Last year, sort of the most recent one was the CEO of Carlson Travel, right? So that's a massive global travel organization, and it's run by a woman. So that's sort of a global program for us. And we, it's not that I'm a sponsor. I'm not attached to someone who's a sponsee in Malaysia. I'm attached to a sponsee who was at the time in Puerto Rico. She's since taken a promotion, moved to the U.S. We have sponsees here in Malaysia that are working with somebody in Boston, for example. So that's one global program. We also run women's network programs at almost all of our sites. I'm happy to say the team, many of them on the call today, launched ours yesterday. So we had our formal launch. And those are really more self-defined local programs, but tied together to a global initiative around our employee resource groups, right? So those are two specific examples. I would say Boston Scientific has done a few things on metrics that are important, as I mentioned, stating them and publishing them, right? The other thing we do, and I'm not as, let's take it from the US and Europe perspective, we run, there's a lot of documentation about pay equity, right? Particularly the data in the US and Europe. And we run global pay equity audits across the globe, right? And so we are at 99% now. And what pay equity means for folks who aren't familiar with is there is a history, certainly in the US, and I can't speak as much for other countries, but of women getting paid less for the same job, right? So we have worked to absolutely close those gaps, and there are sponsors globally to drive that as well. Then we use a third party to audit it, right? So those types of things show that sponsorship at the most senior level. But when you get back to your original question about people dropping out of the workforce, if you were sitting here knowing you were getting paid 20% less than a man who was doing the same job, like, how enthusiastic are you going to be about coming to work, right? So there's just a perfect example of things that can happen that you don't realize are going on that can be related to discouraging people, right? On top of all the other sort of work-life things we talk about. So, but that sponsorship, and it's a great opportunity, right? And as a sponsor, you learn, just like you do as a sponsee. It's rewarding. It's a rewarding relationship both ways.
Thank you, Dave. I hope, Tracy, the questions that you gave just now has been answered by Dave. Yeah, truly, I think, what I would like to encourage the audience is that find the sponsors, who really are advocates. And I'm sure you can find them. The beauty of being in a multinational, like an American or UK company, is that this is a very global program, and I fully agree with Dave. Sponsorship comes from all over the place, all over the world. Yeah, you find mentors, you find sponsors. That's going to kind of launch it. They are that launch pad, to help you in your career. Where you have that sort of regular sessions. Yeah, I mean, that reminds me of one of the companies I was working for earlier. We had a similar program. Yeah, how we accelerate the leadership. Yeah. Okay, so we'll just take a short kind of a pause for a while. I'm going to change gear a little bit. This question is more for Weina, because I want to recognize Weina because she's really a voice in the public, where recently she contributed an article in the newspaper, The Star. The title of the article is called "Budget with an Agenda for Women." So I thought I just want to honor her and recognize her, and just give her that short few minutes to talk about about how Malaysia, how she thinks about the government is doing, in helping women to rise up. Yeah.
Hey, thanks, Johnny, for the kind words. It's just part of my KPI to make commentaries for budget, after the announcement. But first thing is, I would say, when the Minister of Finance presented the budget speech, and if we were looking through that the whole chunk of that budget speech, what caught my eye was he actually mentioned, I just a quick one, under the fourth strategy of the first goal of the Rakyat's well-being, is to prioritize the inclusiveness agenda. I was like, wow, this coming from a Minister of Finance. I mean, myself, I am Deloitte Southeast Asia Diversity and Inclusive Leader, and to hear that from a Minister of Finance, of course, he has his banking background. I can see where he's driving from. So you could see that certain of his initiatives, like for example, the microfinancing programs, the support system to the frontliners, having the what you call the crèche to take care of the children, yeah. Certain incentives like to the kindergarten fees, the childcare centers fees that has increased in terms of the tax relief that you can claim. All these are little things, but at least something that specifically to women. But I also want to credit the initiative that started actually in the 2019 budget. So we were talking earlier of the 2021 budget, but in the 2020 budget when Lim Guan Eng presented, he also had certain initiatives, like for example, extending the career comeback women, yeah, those returning from the coming back into the industry, and subject to certain conditions, they get income tax exemption for the income they earn for 12 months consecutively. So I think it's quite heartening to actually see that certain specific initiatives. Of course, if I recall very vividly, when then Najib advocated to have at least 30% of women on board of the listed companies. And indeed, this is something that public listed companies are scrutinized in their annual report and all that, and also by the SC. That was a good start. This has ongoing initiatives. I think it's a very good advocate that the government is showing that to elevate that women's presence, yeah, in the industry.
Right. Thanks, Rina, for sharing. I think this was in line with what YB Hannah said in the up close personal session 2 days ago. That her ministry, or what used to be her ministry, the former deputy minister of the women's ministry and children. So they were like pushing for like a triple, the budget. There was 10 million in 2019, and in 2020, they're pushing to 30 million. So that's something which is great. I mean, at least the ministers are kind of paying heed to see the importance to kind of raise the women, what they call childcare, the support system, in that sense, also the policy. Okay. Now, I think how time has flown, in that sense. Now it's 11:51, just about 9 minutes down. Let's just talk about the last topic here, perhaps. We talk about networking. We've heard today the various speakers, panelists talk about networking, and we know how the power of networking has for one's professional career in that sense, So how does an organization support in building or creating network for women? And what are the ways that women networking platform, be it internal or among the community? We talk about women network within an organization, and even we have that sort of external, they kind of maybe among the different organizations, sometimes they do get together and they invite each other for this kind of a conference. How do they kind of help promote learning, coaching, mentoring, and development within the fraternity? So Tara, would you like to just take a step on that one?
Sure. I think this is really important, Johnny, especially as many of us come from very large global organizations, right? So I think this is important to do at a local level, but also at a global level. So for me, I think this needs to be a balance of kind of, structured programs with also informal networking and one-on-one. So we, as Dave mentioned before, we are very similar in the programs that we offer. We have a ton of gender-focused leadership programs. We're doing a lot of initiatives on the the pay gap as well, and getting women involved in those discussions has been key. And what's happened during some of those discussions is it's created networks that we didn't realize would happen as a result of getting people more involved in these discussions. So globally and locally, we've built some informal networks that have kept on. Some meet face to face, and in this virtual environment, as we said before, in the new norm, we've kept it up on Zoom, and we've kept it up on WhatsApp, sending articles, asking questions, which I think has been key. And then we have formal programs. We have formal programs that meet as a group. There may be training, but it's also just for open discussion where there's usually a topic, right? It could be about speaking up was a recent one. And how do we get people in that have kind of experience or strength in that topic in order to make people, women, feel more comfortable. So, but I also think there's this, I call it individual networking as well. I also think as leaders, we need to make sure that we are reaching out to the talent, the female talent that's in our organization, and doing it on our own, right? So not only just asking them to reach out to us, but as leaders, I think we need to be the ones that actually spend some time with some of this talent, do some one-on-one networking with them. And we've been calling it in my business virtual coffee right now, right? Because we don't want to make it sound so formal as mentoring, but just doing this kind of one-on-one networking to giving some of the female talent pool that we've identified some time with my exco or with me. So I do think it needs to be a balanced approach, right? Because people learn differently as well. So we have networking via these formal ways. We have these informal networks of large groups of women globally where we get on and talk about topics. But I also think we need to make sure that we are giving people some of that one-on-one kind of networking as well, and giving people an opportunity maybe to ask questions or get some advice, in a more private, informal setting.
Right. I guess the opportunity is really endless today because of virtual. Everyone
Yep.
is so used to virtual now. I mean, it used to be like have to be in person, then it's going to be effective networking. Yeah. But
Agreed.
now everybody is like all over the world. You can dial in different time zone and all come into one room like this. Yeah.
Yep.
So, Leah, how about what do you think about this? The networking.
Yes. Yeah, yes, I think very similar to Tara. In Philip Morris, we also look at it from like a broad, global structured approach, and then drill it down to the day-to-day, actual conversations that we have with people. So, for example, similar to what Dave and Tara also mentioned about this pay gap. I mean, Philip Morris actually has the equal salary certification, right? Which certified that we pay equally male and female for the same jobs, right? And I think we're the first multinational company to get this global certification. And what we do there, as what Dave was saying, is that we announce it before we secure the certification and after we secured. Why? Because we want to hold ourselves accountable. We want to tell everyone that it's okay to talk about this, that if you see that there is in fact an issue, that there's a pay gap somewhere, you should be free to talk about it. Because I think awareness of gaps, awareness of issues is what initiates the conversation and initiates a network being built to actually address the issue. And then there are also, of course, the smaller day-to-day activities. We have open desking. We're really pushing for project-based organization to really get people to not only talk to the people in their silos, but really broaden it and get the advantage of talking to a broader audience and not just the usual people that they deal with. And in there, we have our PNC, People and Culture group, that sort of monitors to make sure that the gender topic is always at top of mind and is promoted on a day-to-day basis.
Well, thank you, Leah. So I think we are at the top of the hour soon, and I want to be respectful of the audience time. Yeah. So I think what we will do is right now before we wrap up, I just want to go around to each of the panel and any last words or any words of encouragement, as we seal, the closure of this session about charting the path forward. What is the most key takeaway, from each of you, for this session? Maybe I'd like to start with Reina.
Probably have a gendered lens, and then be committed. And also, I think we have to be accountable for it. Get everybody be accountable, then it will be a good step.
Do you think we should hard code the KPI in that sense?
Oh yes, we indeed as partners of the firm, we have a KPI to make sure that we kind of sponsor a female high potential. So that's in our KPI as well.
Right, okay. Tara, how about you? You're on mute, Tara.
Sorry, the beauties of virtual panels. I think for me, don't forget the younger male generation when we talk about how to get gender equality in the organization. When we talk about male advocacy, we often talk about the senior males, as we all did today, and how we get them to rally and support. And I think it was Wayna before that said, we've been talking about this a long time. We don't want to talk about this in 20, 30 years again to say, how do we get more males? So it's been shown that millennial males are much more supportive because they just grew up differently, right? In more dual working households, divorced households, more cultural dynamic households, and even just if you have a son, right? So I have a son, my husband doesn't work, and I realized, I always thought I was trying to set the best image for my daughter, but I realized I'm setting an even better image for him because his norm is, my husband taking him to school, well, maybe not school right now in a virtual world, but taking him to school, play dates, parent teacher, cooking, doing all this stuff for him that traditionally the female has done. So don't forget, the younger generations as we go forward.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you. Dave, how about you? Yeah,
I think the one thing I'd like to bring up is the idea of confidence matching capability, right? So I think Tara alluded to it earlier. We were talking about, job description. Should I apply? Should I not apply? I'm an eternal optimist, and I tend to look at people and go, they could stretch into that role, right? But many times the conversations that I will have at first with a candidate will be, I'm nervous. I'm going to fail. I don't want to let you down. But I see confidence. I see the capability and I have the confidence. And it's how do we, through the sponsorship, through the networking, through one-on-ones, whatever it is, start to have people have the confidence in their own capability. Because I think, they, in general, can do more than they think they can do. So that's a gap that I would just love to close. And it really goes for everybody, all employees, right? But I think from a female perspective, that's a gap that I would love to see progress on, is just realizing how much potential and then being confident in how much potential we have, right? A person has. I think that's a critical piece.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you reminded me of our conversation about the difference between a male's confidence and a female's confidence, especially in this part of the world.
Yeah. And I think the key message, and there are people on this call I've had this conversation with, we don't put people in jobs where they're going to fail, right? Because as an organization, we want to be successful. So if I'm going to put you in that role, it's because I know you can do it, right? And so that that should also drive confidence, right? It's not anything more than that. And I think I love when people have the realization of, yeah, I can do it, right? I mean, maybe it's a stressful thing to transition to a more senior role, but we're not going to put you there if you can't do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the time.
Last but not least, Leah, what would be your parting word?
Yes, I think, just to close, I would just highlight that for me, intentionality is key to women empowerment. I think we have to be purposeful and intentional about it. What we are not mindfully including, we are unconsciously excluding. So I do think that, with what everyone else has said here, the leadership has to come through, and the commitment has to be from the top all the way down to all the levels of the organization.
Thank you, Leah. So thank you so much, all the panelists. Really wonderful insights and a lot of good personal sharing. Yeah, I think some of us could identify with your stories, and the people out there. I believe that these are the journey that we continue to persevere. Let's continue to see how we can be successful in this. As what the panel said, be very intentional. Make sure you have the set KPI and you have the solid program to measure the success. Yeah. So with that, I'd like to just thank everyone here once again for wonderful. It's been time well spent for the whole morning. And over to you, Amir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, our panelists. What a great discussion we just had. It's a pleasure to host all of you, and thank you all our panelists for participating. Just to close us off for the session today, I'm going to bring back our CEO, Siobhan, who's going to give some closing remarks for us for the program today. Siobhan, if you're there, just unmute yourself. Yeah.
I'm right here. Thank you very much, and fantastic discussion by all of you. I think it's absolutely brilliant that we are taking on this topic, and I'd like to be doing much more in 2021. So I look forward to seeing all of you there. Again, this is Women's Week. We have a lot going on. I hope that everybody's on the call and the audience will look at the other programs that we're holding tomorrow, Monday and Tuesday, and be part of the discussion. But I think the discussion on this morning on driving confidence and driving opportunities that start at home, with the way that that our parents give us that confidence, with those that are our parents driving that confidence and opportunities in their, and in opening up the opportunities in their minds at a young age, is vitally important to the success that we see in the workplace. And when we get to the workplace, the raising of girls and kind of gets shifted into the sponsors and the mentors that we have. And I think that's a lot of the responsibilities we need to give to, a lot of responsibility that we're taking on as we shepherd talent through our talent pool. So with that, I just want to say thank you to everybody. I hope you enjoyed participating, and I hope that we can continue this conversation, and I look forward to doing much more with all of you in AMCHAM in 2021. I also want to say thank you very much to our sponsors for this forum, which is both Boston Scientific and Philip Morris Malaysia. Thank you all for being here today.